Hello, my name is Kaylin Pacheco, and this is my AFRS final presentation. The topic I chose was race and its adaptations. So, to start off, you may ask, what is race? So, the definition of race is the physical traits that a category of humans carry. So, some physical features of race are like skin colors, facial features, skin and or eye and hair colors, and face figures. And there are some race that I'm gonna give you guys some examples of some races. So there's like white and Caucasian, there's African Americans, there's Mexican slash Latino, there's American Indian, Alaska Native, there's Asian, and then there's Pacific Islanders. So, according to Google Arts and Cultures, they discuss how race is part of a person. Sorry. And I can affirm that race is a big thing to people because that's what makes an individual, that's what makes a person, the features and characteristics is what defines them. So moving on, I'm sorry, moving on, the interpretation that it has. So the interpretation that race has is that it leads to racism, which is a target of a race group that can lead to other racial motifs and further actions. So like the interpretation is basically like racism. So like nowadays, racism has its view of a narrative of a view has a view of a very negative connotation because people choose to incorporate racism to their daily lives. It also has to do a lot when you're growing up and the way that people or your parents, people around you raise you, because if you don't have the mindset of being a racist, then you are not gonna have your racist comments. You're gonna be more aware of the other races there are. You'll be equal with everyone. So people choose to incorporate that into their lives, and the term that racism or racists have adapted throughout time is into basically the people that's behind them, the people that comes up with all these different terms and everything as well has adapted or played a big role into adapting this. An example from Oxford bibliographies is that now they stated in the article how race now is used to distinguish the different race between people. Or, well, quote unquote, they said, to distinguish between groups of people who share phenotype characteristics. At the beginning, race was just a visual presentation of one's physical features, and now it's sad to say, but this is what it has officially became, that people use race to distinguish humans and the difference in humans. Moving on. Oh, actually, before I move on, I also found this quote that blew my mind. It was by Peter F. Hamilton. It says interpretation, though the filters of ideology has always been one of our racist curses. And that's so true because our ideologies is what makes us believe certain things, and then that's what it starts to adapt into. It's like a little branch that branches off to different little things, and that's what it leads to. So moving on to where and when did it come from? So the term race actually came later in the 16th century when the English language started to adapt. So however, the concept of race was always there. It became influential through the enslavement of Africans in the colony of America. Through time, the term race started to become influential and has incorporated into different meanings that society has given it. Not only has incorporated different meanings, but it has also gained different theories that reflect off the meaning of race. People come up with different theories that has nothing to do with race, but they consider it to be with race. When in reality, it's not. It's just like I mentioned, people's different ideologies. So, an example that started to adapt was the view that people had towards African Americans that went through, and it's sad because they went through obviously enslavement. People started to change their perspectives towards them. So they got to name calling, and to this point, which is still going on, and it will lead to my next topic, is discrimination. People still use this. They still are race. They still are racism. There's still racist people that exist in here. So moving on. How has it influenced society, you may ask? So race has influenced society by giving us labels that we society follow. So being privileged, having wealth, having power, all that has contributed into influence in society, because when people have these things, they feel the superiority, that they feel like they're on top. They feel they have all this control of people. So race has really influenced society into people creating their racial identities, which leads into society creating awareness for these racism and the way society views racism, which people have influenced society also by creating different beliefs, and then also theories that so well, basically people have created these beliefs and theories so more people can create cults to suppress the opposing group. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't even move to the next slide, but here it is. In this slide too, you could see the racial equity versus the racial justice, and then it just talks about little, for example, this one, the critical element, and then like the equity lens, like how you can, obviously show equity. And here are some examples. I don't know, it's just pretty interesting to me that people create different a lot of terminologies that have to do race just because of the significance that race brings to people. Moving on. So some notes that I did or got after researching were I have three different I have three main points, but anyways, so we now there's a lot of racism, and I don't think racism is something that's proud to say or proud to be, or like proud to, when you hear people throwing their little slurs or racial slurs, I don't think that's something that people should be proud of, because it's sad to see that the hate that people have within each other due to your race. um Moving on is the way that people have minds that leads to these different connotations, denotations of um race is what, like, everyone has their own beliefs, and I understand that you grew up with something, you're gonna think something, but it's not always like that, because when an example would be when the BLM movement was going on, I saw different people that would state or mention how they got kicked out of their house because they were for the movement. Meanwhile, you could choose if you want to be a racist person. You could choose if you want to throw around your racism's comments. You choose what you want to be. You make it what you want to be. Some examples of different originators or creators that I took or from Mr. Johnson's, Professor Johnson's I'm sorry, Professor Johnson's slideshow was, I'm gonna use two examples. One that really, the two that, maybe I'll use three that really caught my attention. One of them was Dr. Benjamin Rush, how he said that blacks would be cured and can become white, which I don't know how people have the power even to say these type of things, because that's the racist what makes them. That's what makes them unique from everybody else's different other race. For example, like the black people, they have their skin color is what makes them very unique from the white Caucasian people. I myself, I'm Mexican, and I think me being in the middle of, I mean, I'm not that much of dark complected or anything, but I think that's what really makes me me. My title of race is what makes me me, because obviously there's different things that branch off of my race. Another creating another originator that I saw was it was Jean Louis Radolph Agassiz, how he said that blacks were at the bottom of the theory of origins because of the way they were. I can completely disagree on this. If anything, there's nobody to be at the bottom of this theory or hierarchy they want to put, because I've seen thousands of them and I do not agree with those. Everyone's unique, everyone's equal in one way, because we all breathe the same, we all have the same facial features, we all, I mean, there are some difference, but we all have, and we all build the same. And it's also comes with genetic and DNA wise. There's nothing that has to do with changing people because of the way they are born. You are not going to change someone's skin color. That's no, 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 no. And another one that I would choose was it was Ernest Haeckel, I believe, how he was praising and saying that gorillas and chimpanzees were above African Americans. There's different comparisons that we can make to white or Caucasian people, but we are not gonna feel that. I believe it was inferiority, because white and Caucasian people will always have the superiority over any race. And we can all agree to that, because in my sociology class, I actually read something. It was an article of all the different races um, and ethnicities that there are. And no matter what, Ray or white and Caucasians were always at the top. And it's sad to say that you have to be white or Caucasian to feel the superiority, but I don't know. That's just, it makes me so emotional when emotional when it comes to mentioning these things. So my next thing is, how is race relevant? How is race relevant? So race is pretty relevant today, because it's what defines an individual. Like I mentioned, when you're applying for a job, if we were so-called equal, why would they ask you for your race? Why would they ask you for your ethnicity? And some people justify it by saying, oh, they want to know a little bit about who you are, your background, and all. But if you think about it, there are different stereotypes to each race. For example, humans are for Mexicans, like, oh, they're this and that. An example would be like, oh, tacos, or oh, they're immigrants. Like, there's little bubbles that pop up when you mention a race. Um, and it's pretty relevant today, because we still separate them and categorize people based on their race. Moving on is to, what has race led to? So race has led to the adaptation of racism and discriminations. So this has influenced individuals into thinking that they are superior with their race comments. But as new generations are coming in, like my generation, it is no longer a place to be a racist person. A lot of my generation was taking action when the whole George Floyd incident, all the BLM movements, they were taking they were like, I don't even know how to explain it, but they had the power to do so. My generation did a lot to that. For example, they played a significant role in using their social media platforms to discuss about a big issue that was occurring at the time. They came up with different protests, and people would go to these protests. It was amazing to see the union, like a lot of the people were unionized for once. But I mean, it's something that happened. I mean, you wouldn't want people to come together for an issue like that. You would want to see people together all the time. But that's just what it has led to. And I also found this photo on the internet that says race is a social construct. The idea of race was created by people, and I can totally agree, because race is from people. It's not. It's from us. We who knew that race would have like a certain title now, because how can I explain it? Let me look at my notes real quick, because I took down a note that, oh, I took down, let me see. I actually, this is also from from Professor Johnson's. Um, society give them the superior or the power to make them feel like that, because people come up with them. An example would be the January 6th incident. People, not everyone was part of it, but people um, they felt they felt like they had power to be there because it was a content being developed. I mean, obviously because of the election, but moving on, which is moving on to my last point. My conclusion is that the adaptation that the term race has brought through decades is pretty excessive. However, just like we see the bad side to it, there are so many positive connotations, and that's what gives me motivation and power, a big push, because I do want to get into law enforcement. I am a criminology major, so that's what gives me big high hopes, aiming that I will be able to change and influence society into just being equal with each other one day. But yeah, I think race has had its greatest adaptations, and we make it what we want it to be. Thank you.